I don't know if anybody cares about his boat. But apparently that was a big part of the deal. So, Martin, I'm happy for you or sad that happened. I don't know about the boat.
Hello, welcome to Money Lap. Awesome start. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill. This is our podcast about all motorsports, but you already knew that. As always, check out themoneylap.com for the newsletter we have 3 times a week, the best 5 minutes in motorsports, and on Mondays, it's all the motorsports highlights, extended highlights from around the world. And then Wednesdays and Fridays, it's full of news and fun stuff in the world of motorsports. We start the PR Lap, Landon. Our newsletter continues to grow. It's gaining hundreds of people a week, basically, which is wild. So it's cool to see people interacting with that. If you'd like to see something different, please let us know. Also, our Instagram and TikTok. Did you know we're famous on those platforms?
We are on those platforms.
Yeah, exactly. We're famous. We're big. Our clips of this podcast do hundreds of thousands of views, but we're not yet at hundreds of thousands of listeners. So if you're like a marketing wizard out there and can tell us how to connect those two better, please let us know. We'd take that advice.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be nice. We're recording this on August 9th. Yesterday was my birthday. I spent it in the Raleigh airport, which was exactly how I wanted to spend it, which was awesome. But you know what I wish I had? Because I was kind of tired when I ended up there, and there was a whole flight debacle where I took off from Charlotte on my way to Connecticut and ended up in Raleigh, and I'm not going to bore everyone with the details, but I didn't get on the wrong flight. You should just know that. But one thing was I was trying to get a bunch of work done, and I just wished I had better coffee. More specifically, Four Sigmatic coffee, because I usually have it with me. I have the instant ones, but I was out of them, and so I had to drink other coffee. But why did I want this coffee? Because I had to do a bunch of work for our Money Lap stuff and for my racing, and this coffee makes you smarter. It's infused with functional mushrooms that work to wake up your mind. They say people feel the effects in as little as 7 days, and they're an awesome partner of this podcast. So please try this coffee. Use the code MONEYLAP at foursigmatic.com. You can get their Think Starter Pack, which is 40% off, and then another 15% off using MoneyLap, which is 55% off. But I'm not going to bore everyone with more details about it other than you need to go check it out because it is just simply the best coffee, and it would have helped me get more work done on my birthday in this Raleigh airport. So if you find yourself in an airport trying to get work done, I can only hope that you have Four Sigmatic with you. So check it out.
You buried the lead there, Parker.
What's that?
I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned it was your birthday, but that was quite an airport adventure. And I was able to follow along with it with you yesterday in our group thread with another industry member, important industry member, he who will not be named publicly Absolutely on this podcast. But in this group thread, we talk often about our travels, and we share our American Airlines points, status updates, and upgrade. Got that upgrade conversations. And you were almost stranded in Raleigh with an interesting story. What happened, Parker?
Well, so I have this thing where I feel like
and by the way, you made a veteran move to get through it, to get out of it.
Well, you don't reach executive platinum without doing a fair amount of flights. My record is well over 120 in 1 year back in 2019. So that was every 2.5 days. So I've done my fair share on American Airlines to know when things are going right or wrong. In this case, I took off from Charlotte around 2:30, headed to Connecticut, specifically Westchester Airport. We had unfortunately had a passenger who fell ill. They had to emergency land the plane in Raleigh. I think we were halfway to Connecticut, which means we basically turned around and went to Raleigh. And then, was like, all right, we're going to take this thing back off. And about, 30 minutes in, they go, oh, actually, sorry, the crew has timed out. We have no crew to fly this plane. So at that exact moment, I thought, random, different airport. There is no routes that ever go from Raleigh to Westchester where I was trying to go. But there is routes that go Raleigh to LaGuardia, which can get me just as close, basically. And so I immediately hopped on the app, booked a seat that was at a couple hours later on one of those LaGuardia flights. And sure enough, I got home, and when I landed in New York at around 9 o'clock that night, the flight, they said they were getting a flight crew for it, by the way, as I was going to my other flight, and I made friends with all these people. They had not taken off yet. So I don't even know if they made it, but made the veteran move to dip and spend a lot of my time in the Admirals Club in Raleigh Airport. Yeah, so by the way, I don't think anyone cares about travel woes. Like, everyone, you say all these things to people, and they're like, oh, that's sorry, I'm sorry, oh, that sucks, oh my God, I had the same thing, but no one really, really cares, you know?
It's like your fantasy football team. I don't really care. I know it's getting to be fantasy football season. Everybody's going to want to tell me about their draft picks and how much time they've spent on it. Yeah. And I'm going to be honest. Please save your breath.
Well, okay, so before we dive, we're going to talk about racing. We swear on this. But hold on. So then I tweeted, and I thought this tweet was fire, but it went nowhere. And I was like, we need an AI chatbot that is like it acts like a human that you tell all your travel woes to, and then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I had that same issue. Oh, it like consoles you, and then it would give you options like, hey, you know what? Let's write them a really angrily worded letter, or you know what? Let's get your points back. How can let's figure out a way to get your points back from the airline and like one up them a little bit or something. Like, that's the bot. If you're in Silicon Valley right now and you're working on, some bot to take over everyone's jobs, stop that immediately and work on this so that we can fight against big airline.
Hang on a second, Parker.
What?
Hang on. Maybe we're the problem here. We are the problem in society, that we are so cynical that we just have no empathy. We don't care about others, and we don't even want to listen. We don't want to hear about your travel woes. We don't have the time and the emotional capacity to care about other people. God, I just outed myself. You know what?
That's deep.
I'm changing my tune, Parker. I'm changing my tune.
Okay.
Give me all of your fantasy football teams. Tell me everything. I want to know more. I want to know about how important it is to you. Nope.
Here's the thing. I don't even care enough about my own travel woes. I'm sorry, but I don't care about your travel woes. I've gotten this like zen place where it's all going wrong. I also go into this like, you know what? There's way worse things in life. Just enjoy the hilariousness of the journey and this whole experience. And so I try to really stay positive. And that's I don't care.
Well, you know what? Let's pivot this into something else that maybe we can ask people to help us not be cynical in life. And don't be cynical yourselves in life. Leave us a good review, because we didn't get any new Apple reviews this week, and that makes Parker sad.
It does.
And maybe Parker does have his own internal journey to go through, his own personal journey to go through in terms of cynicism, and myself included. Mine when it comes to your fantasy football teams or anybody else's, and Parker when it comes to people's travel. So we're all going to work on that, and what we need you guys to work on is the Apple reviews. Tell us about this show. Tell us if you care, or if you don't care. I don't know. I think we actually got our first 4-star review. So we were 5 stars all the way through, and now somebody gave us a 4-star review. And I don't even know if I don't see it in our list here. Sometimes it makes me wonder if it's one of those 4-star reviews, like at a restaurant, where like someone leaves a 4-star review of a restaurant where they're like, absolutely love this restaurant. The menu was incredible. The service was great. 4 stars because some random thing. You know what I mean? But it might as well have been a 5-star experience.
Or the
4
old
stars because I couldn't find a parking spot. I don't.
Yeah, there's no perfect. I like that. Like just like race car drivers, there's no perfect lap. It's there's no perfect podcast
right.
in their eyes. 4 stars is as high as it goes. We also we're at 94 on our quest to 100. I used to just be able to say,
we're close.
Yeah, I used to be able to just say that's all 5 stars. But as you pointed out, we did get 1 4-star, and no new written ones. So please let us know. Be passionate, just like the chat bot about travel, or the opposite of what people think of your travel woes. Send us. We do care what you have to say about this. We did get a YouTube comment. ACAV704 said, "Keep pounding the drum of Richmond dirt. I brought the idea up about 4 years ago. I absolutely love driving Richmond. Probably my best track on iRacing, but it's absolutely worth a try. I will 100% will never go to a Richmond Cup race, but I'll definitely be more interested in making the drive to see dirt," which is interesting. And NASCAR guy 8072 said, "Man, I'm glad to find this podcast." So that's nice. Nice of them.
Man, sometimes the simplest ones are the best.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I raced in Michigan this past weekend, and I don't want to go too deep into that, but my big machine racing team did a great job. Our whole team was probably our best downforce race of the year, speed-wise, which is pretty cool. We're basically, aside from New Hampshire, where we would have easily finished top 10, maybe had a top 5 car, where we wrecked on the restart. We've basically, since Sonoma, been the top 10 every race. So that's been pretty cool. We're pretty consistent. But one person I had to race against was the 10 car, which I find myself racing this car a lot. In that car was Ross Chastain, who is the single best aero blocker on the planet. And what I mean by that is he won a race earlier this year at Nashville, the Cup race, being able to hold off Martin Truex Jr., where he would just adjust his line perfectly to never let Martin have the clean air that he needed to get to his bumper to get by him. And I noticed this maybe a year ago in the truck race at Darlington, racing Ross for like third or something. And he had this amazing ability as we head off in the corner that, like, often you are able as a driver to say, like, the little indications of where they're going to go. Bottom, top, middle, what they're going to do with their car at the entry. And you kind of think, okay, they're going bottom, I'm going top. Or vice versa, right? When you're trying to get by them and use multiple lanes and get clean air. And sometimes you have to trick them and that sort of thing to really get the run you need, or they try to take your lane away. But he's incredible at making you think so late into the corner he's going to do one thing, and then he does the other thing. So you think, all right, I'm entering the corner. Oh, he's definitely going to high. He's going high. I'm going low. And the second you just creep that car low, he somehow is driving the corner perfectly, looking in his mirror, and just gets in front of you. I'm like, he's unbelievable at it. I even talked to him afterwards and was like, dude, I have to just – I don't get frustrated anymore with it because I sit there and I take notes thinking, like, okay, if I'm ever going to be that level, I've got to figure out what this guy's doing. But he's the best in the world, man. I don't know how he does it.
So two things real quick. I know we don't have to dwell on this, but you sparked an interest, so I want to go down the path. First of all, I do think that the aero blocking is such a big deal in the Cup cars that he's just very well trained at it, right?
Yep.
And you guys get Cup drivers in the field, but not so often, right? That you get to race head to head with someone like Ross at an aero track, right? We have less intermediate tracks on the schedule than ever, so I think that's part of it. It's just a little bit of a treat, and then also you're racing against a guy who, you know, that's such a big factor in those Cup cars. He's pretty well trained at it, and he's definitely good at it. Second of all, one thing that stands out to me about Ross aero blocking at Michigan, like specifically to this weekend, and your answer to this question will determine what I think here. Did you feel like, did I lose Parker? He gone.
So
Okay.
I clicked the wrong button. I clicked leave when I meant to click chat, and apparently those two buttons do entirely different things.
Okay, so
continue
I
what
was
you were
dragging
saying.
my question out. I was dragging my question out so long that you just left the podcast. You were like, I can't. My question was, when you were racing around him, did you feel like he was backing up turn one quite a bit more than you were?
No. Okay, no, because I felt like in turn one, that was one of my strengths, was my entry ability, and therefore I was comfortable enough to be able to really do a large arc when I needed to and try and run the top, and then if anything else, I could throw a bunch of speed to the top and turn the car down across the lanes to get it to turn, and I would get a run at him doing that. Mm-hmm. And so it would give me the run towards 3, which eventually I did get the pass done, which I got beside him off 2, and then he and I went side by side into 3. I drove it really hard down the bottom, and he kind of let me go. And that's when I got the pass done. Then we had green flag stops.
Well, that kind of blows out my theory. I just feel like I've watched his driving style, and I've seen him. I've raced against him at Michigan for position, kind of in that scenario before. I've studied his driving style, and I felt like one thing that he typically does at Michigan is kind of back up the corner, and he's really good at getting in deep, but then also slowing the car down quickly and then carrying lots of speed through the middle as opposed to like maybe bombing the car in, or carrying a lot of part throttle down into the corner. And I just feel like that when you say that he's really good at making a last minute adjustment to his line, I was kind of in my head thinking, I wonder if that driving style of backing up turn one or getting his speed slowed down quickly gives him options to still make a lane choice in the first third of the corner. Where if you're like fully committed driving in deep into the corner, you kind of have to commit pretty early to what line you're going to run, right?
Yep.
So it takes away your ability to react to the guy behind you. If your agenda is like, oh, I'm bombing it in, or I got to run part throttle all the way down into the middle of the corner, and then the guy behind you changes lanes, it's a little bit harder for you to adjust to that. But if you are more conservative on entry and you're smarter, more patient with the car on entry, you could kind of back up the entry, check your mirror. If the guy behind you makes an adjustment, you can adjust with it. And I was curious if those two are maybe related, but maybe not.
It's a good point. I don't know. I think it's maybe
what was
slightly
really
track
going on?
dependent. Yeah, I don't know. I've started to figure out a little bit of how he does it, but I haven't fully. And I'm not going to go too deep, and I don't want to put it out there. Basically, what I've figured out, but I'm pretty open.
That's fine.
Normally.
We can talk about it later.
In this, I think I figured out what the best way I can put it out there is he hedges his bet, if you know what I mean, on the entry. And when you start to follow him for lap after lap, you're like, and you get close to him, you make a run at him, you'll notice he's sort of the signal is less that he's choosing top or bottom, and that he starts to hedge, and he takes like almost an educated guess at which way you're going, and then he reacts the opposite of that hedge. So he tricks you. Yeah. It's pretty good
Interesting.
stuff. Yeah.
I was kind of hoping you would dive more into it, but you want to keep a secret, so I get it.
Well, okay. You know what? Screw it. What do I care? So what I started to figure out was that when you go bottom or top, you know why? Because, yes, well, spoiler alert. Here, I'm just going to get into it. So you go top or bottom, you kind of commit as you put it, and you can sort of see the attitude of the car on entry and sort of the line choice and the rate at which you catch them maybe on entry. If they go bottom, you go top, you roll a little bit more speed, that sort of thing. To the bottom, the separation happens. What I noticed a little bit of what he's doing is he's not indecisive. He's hedging in a way that he's like, I think you have a higher percentage chance of going bottom because you ran top 3 times and not gotten to me. And so he's doing that math in his head. And basically, he is, convincing you he's going to do one thing because he's thought the percentages is that you're going to go down there. And then at that last moment, he looks and he thinks, oh, no, you're not. You're going top. And that's when he moves up. And so he's trying to almost, in some respects, he's doing math in real time of what he believes he's going to do. He's basically card counting into the corner, which means he's trying to really spoil your entry into the corner every single time, and he's really good at it. And so there you go, following his spoiler and unable to not get clean air and make the pass.
Well, the goal is to get to a spoiler. And if you're a diehard racing fan, you know all about spoilers, which means you need to check out SpoilerDiecast.com. With one of the largest inventories in the industry, they have over 800 unique products currently in stock, including diecast and apparel offerings for NASCAR, dirt and sprint cars, IndyCar, and F1. And with their pre-order system in place, you can be sure to get your hands on the latest diecast releases without the long wait. What's even better, Parker? All orders ship same or next day, and they offer free shipping on orders over $20. Plus, use the promo code MONEYLAP to receive free shipping and 5% off all orders. That's right, 5% off, folks. The most aggressive offer in the racing industry, I think. Don't wait. Head to Spoiler Diecast today and get your racing fix. Or if you're Parker, get on Ross's spoiler into turn 1 at Michigan. Get him loose. Get underneath him on turn 2 exit.
Got him. Got him. Also, you can get the link for Spoiler Diecast and the link for Four Sigmatic in the description of this podcast episode. So check those out at SpoilerDiecast.com, Four Sigmatic, F-O-U-R, Sigmatic, S-I-G-M-A-T-I-C.com. Those are our partners of this podcast. They make it possible. We bring this all to you for free, and all we ask is you go check out those 2 great partners. Let's talk NASCAR. in our big discussion topics. Lots going on. This past weekend, RFK, Roush, Fenway, Keselowski, back-to-back wins. And not only is that incredible, but it's Chris Buescher in the 17 car doing that for them. So I interviewed Chris and Brad Keselowski in the pre-race show on Sunday at Michigan for NBC, and I facetiously said they were the hottest team in NASCAR because they had just won the most recent race and led a lot of laps at Richmond, and so it was kind of like a fun joke to say, like, yeah, they're really hot, they're fast here again, they qualified both cars in the top 10, or just about, and that sort of thing. But I didn't expect them to go back-to-back at Michigan. I knew they had a chance, but this is wild. And they're now the leading Ford team right now, and what's funny about them, for all intents and purposes, they do not get the most manufacturer help either. So this is a really, really big deal for this team to be doing what they're doing. And they have, Brad basically in on points, and now Chris is locked in the playoffs. They're going to get both cars in the playoffs for the first time in forever. And one of the most interesting conversations I had with Scott Graves before the Michigan race was, I said, this has to be like a pretty cool moment for you. And he said, what's so cool is that for probably the last, 6, 7, 8 years at what used to be Fenway, Roush Fenway, now Roush Fenway Keselowski, is they had to almost moneyball themselves in the playoffs every year. It was, how are they going to find an angle? How are they going to, commit to super speedways with Stenhouse and get that win? Or how are they going to point their way in some, arbitrary fashion of using all sorts of different strategies and that sort of thing. And so it was always this idea of, like, there wasn't the speed to do it, so we've got to outthink the competition. But this time around, right now, they are just simply fast enough. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty impressive, and I think it's definitely a testament to, obviously, the men and women at RFK and the drivers there, and the improvement they've made since Brad has come on board. But also, I think that it's another example of the next gen doing, from a performance and a parity side of things, accomplishing NASCAR's goals with the next gen. They didn't RFK, again, not taking anything away from the actual work they've done. They've done an incredible job, but they didn't magically come into more money or a new, technical partnership with a manufacturer or, anything like that. I think that they have, they're hitting on all cylinders and operating well right now, but I think the equipment also came to them and leveled the playing field. And the next gen is working that way, and it provides teams like them who do have smart people, they do have resources to hit on something. And, hopefully for their sake that they're not peaking right now, hopefully they're still on the way up so that they can perform in the playoffs. Another thing I want to point out that's really interesting in this era of motorsports, and I don't even think this is just next gen, because I think we saw a little bit of this through the Truex domination and the final sort of stages, the Larson domination, the final stages of the Gen 6 car. I think in this kind of simulation era of NASCAR, when you hit on something as a team, it works everywhere, right? And you run well everywhere. Where in the previous world of building track-specific cars and, like manufacturing individual race cars, there were, short track successes and intermediate track successes, and sometimes the two went well. I mean, obviously you had teams that ran well everywhere and they were just dominant teams. Sometimes you had teams that really excelled at intermediate tracks but that struggled on their short track program, and you hear that all the time. And now it's like, in this world of simulation, somehow the track itself is less of a factor of what determines your success and more of like your total operation. And if you're hitting on all cylinders, you can go to a short track, an intermediate track, and then a road course, and you're just clicking on all. The same team can kind of go on a 3, 4, 5 week run of success, and then when they cool off, it's like they cool off completely. They somebody else takes their place for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. It's one thing I'm kind of noticing that's interesting.
That's fascinating. And you're so right. Because it must be a little bit of like the field is so close. And one of the themes right now, when you spend time in the Cup Series garage in 2023, talking to crew chiefs and drivers and team managers and that sort of thing, is they will all consistently tell you this is the tightest field they've ever had to work and race in. And it's unbelievable how close it is and how tight the competition is to each other and how the smallest little things have huge effects. And so one of the things, as you point out, is that if you find speed with this car, you look at what RFK just did. They were really fast at Richmond, a short track with high tire fall off. You then went to Michigan, a 2-mile oval with very little tire fall off, almost flat out. And they were really fast at both. Like, that's a great example of what you just brought up. And it is such a change of what we've known forever. And this is, what's funny is, like, you and I talk about this on this podcast a lot, but there are so many things that we as a sport and as an industry are discovering about this era of NASCAR in real time, because it's still very unknown.
Yep.
Interesting.
Absolutely. So I think, I think it just shows it's more indicative, big picture of just their total processes as an organization. And it's organizations in general, their processes are more applicable across the board to all tracks, and not just, hey, we're really good at short tracks, or hey, we're really good at intermediates. So that actually, you could even go deeper into that, and that could raise a question of, like, well, remember our other theory about should a team specialize, right? Should they specialize in road courses or specialize in super speedway racing? This kind of maybe could refute that theory, that it's just like, no, maybe you just need to get good because if you're good everywhere. And you just got to keep doing what everybody's doing and figure out how to get good. It's that simple, right?
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Another thing that happened this past weekend, Noah Gragson was suspended by Legacy Motor Club and by NASCAR indefinitely for liking a racially derogatory meme on Instagram, and was replaced by Josh Berry for this past weekend. And obviously a very unfortunate situation there for Legacy Motor Club and all involved. But they also announced that Mike Rockenfeller will be in that car for Indianapolis at the road course, and then also Watkins Glen, who you may remember Mike Rockenfeller's name from driving the Garage 56 car at Le Mans and being a part of that program and doing that with Jimmy Johnson. But it's, for the Legacy Motor Club and Noah, there was a lot of rumors out there already about his standing within that team. It's been a very tumultuous rookie season. That team obviously going through a lot of changes in announcing that they were switching to Toyota in 2024 and did that kind of early, which cut them out of the help from RCR and from Chevy. And so they've been on a bit of an island. And so that is definitely a team that is going through a very tumultuous time, is the best way to put it. I think, what's interesting, though, and the Noah stuff and everything, obviously, that will be worked out between NASCAR and Noah and the team and so on and so forth. But what I think is interesting is when you look at the choice of replacing drivers, of course, Josh Berry jumps in there as the easy replacement since he's sort of been the sub everyone's using right now. Which happens at times, but then putting in a Mike Rockenfeller, although they have the relationship between Jimmy and him for the Garage 56 deal, something's happening here. Shane Van Gisbergen, right, goes and wins at Chicago. You've got Kamui Kobayashi in this race. You've got Jensen Button. You've got Mike Rockenfeller, who filled in the 77 car at Watkins Glen last year. Is this a trend? Is this something that with 8 road courses or 7, whatever we're at right now in the Cup Series, when you're a team in need of a driver, do you no longer, because the Xfinity car is so different, the trucks are so different, do you just go for the international driver? Right, in these scenarios, right? Historically, this would have been a situation where a team looks at the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, and says that's our driver. Instead, it's almost like the breadth or the what am I trying to say? The selection of drivers has opened up so much because of what we're discovering with this next gen car relating to global motorsport.
100%. We talked about this off the podcast. We've talked about this on the podcast. This is kind of an interesting dynamic, I think, in the driver market that we'll continue to be following and making note of and making points. You know, in a little bit here on the pod, we're going to talk about another driver signing situation that was announced today that, you know, could be a sign of bottom signals in the driver market that, and we'll talk about that. You know, you heard us talk about bottom signals in the driver market, I think last week or the week before. But this Mike Rockefeller and this example that you're talking about right now is an example that's kind of counteracting the NASCAR driver bottom signals. It shows that the teams have some leverage if they can, you know, easily venture outside of NASCAR to find drivers. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult for Xfinity drivers or even existing Cup drivers to prove their worth.
Yep.
I think mechanically one of the reasons that this Cup car itself could be, I think there's a couple big reasons. You know, the schedule has more road courses on it, but this Cup car itself is such a departure from the Xfinity car platform. They're no longer on the same platform, meaning they don't run the same tire. The suspension is completely different. The way the cars drive is completely different. You know, they used to be the same car, right? Mm-hmm. They used to be virtually the same car. Different downforce, different horsepower, but all in the same platform. And so, you know, if you wanted to have immediate success, going to the Xfinity garage or even, you know, pulling from a pool of Cup drivers that had our current NASCAR licensed drivers, that would have been your best chance because those are the drivers that know the feel of these cars. Well, now the next gen is so unique. Even then, it's actually closer and more similar to a sports car than it is an Xfinity car. It's opened up this driver market to where we are looking at Australia at supercars drivers, and we're looking at sports car drivers like Mike Rockefeller and Kobayashi. And that is definitely opening up the strategy for drivers to say, okay, there's more than one way to get into NASCAR than just the NASCAR feeder series.
And I spoke to Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain in the last couple weeks when they've jumped in these Xfinity races and done the College cars. And, you know, especially Daniel Suarez, who had not been in one in a while, was like, I'm lost. This car drives nothing like what I'm doing every weekend. And it really just doesn't connect at all. And so you look at it, I love you know, from an outside perspective, as a fan, I love the Xfinity Series has a true identity now. It is where you go if you want to see, one, you know, sort of up-and-coming stars, that sort of thing. But two, it's classic stock car racing that we've known for the last 20-plus years. It's that product right then and there on Saturdays. If you want the product you used to watch on Sundays for the last 20 years before the next gen, there it is for you. But with that, it is so different that you look at a driver like Josh Berry, who has Cup car experience, is going to Cup next year. Him hopping from that Xfinity car the last minute into the Legacy Motor Club car on Saturday was probably a massive undertaking for him. And if you look at the speeds that he had in practice jumping in that car and then into qualifying, it showed, right? And in years past, if you had the old style Cup car and the old Xfinity car, it was a very seamless transition, right? It was maybe a little bit more horsepower, a little different feel here or there, but it was very seamless. Now, think about if you're a driver in the Xfinity Series this weekend at Indy that got called up to drive a Cup car. You would go from shifting a manual 4-speed transmission to a sequential gearbox. Let's just start there. You would go from a big fat tire and a car that's walling around on soft springs to a rigid, short, you know, very small sidewall tire and rigid suspension. Like, it's so different. This really, I think, like you just said and like we've sort of alluded to, this is changing what your opportunity to move up is going to look like in the coming years if they continue to stay this different. And I you know, personally as an outside,
I want to go one step further with that point. I want to go one step further with this point. And I'm not trying to raise alarm bells right now, but at what point does NASCAR care about that? Because NASCAR has feeder series. Like NASCAR has, in theory, a ladder system. And probably if I were NASCAR, I would want to have an effective ladder system where the drivers go through NASCAR's ladder system to get to NASCAR. So if somehow the sport is in a way where drivers don't want to use the ladder system, they can get to the top level of the Cup Series without going through the NASCAR ladder system. They're going to end up, training in other disciplines of racing. Is that, when does NASCAR start to care about that? Right now, I don't think it's a bad thing because, we're getting the drivers that we're getting are big names, right? I think they're bringing attention to the sport. So it's a good, if you're NASCAR, you're probably enjoying that, right? Shane Van Gisbergen and Kobayashi and these are drivers that are definitely bringing some value with them to the sport. But at what point does NASCAR go, oh shoot, is it possible even for NASCAR to look at it and go, oh shoot, none of our drivers are coming from NASCAR, from the NASCAR ladder system. We need to make a change. We need to make some adjustments to the ladder system.
Shit, you are so right. There's going to be an inflection point, and it's going to be when your Xfinity Series champion is passed up for for a ride because forever they're not a big enough, they're someone over from the international world is able to just skip the whole series and jump in there, right? Like that's going to be your
well, isn't that already, I guess, is that already happening?
Well, it's already happening. Yeah, I guess
look at Daniel Hemrick.
Well, and Shane Van Gisbergen, I guess that's going to happen, right? All the rumors that he's going to come over here, he's going to run trucks and Xfinity and Cup next year in a part-time schedule, and he's going to be full-time in 2025. Like that's a rumor out there, right? So it is happening, and so a couple things to break down there. I think NASCAR can protect its ladder system, which is important. I think one of the things that NASCAR has struggled with in the last 20 years is a not well-defined ladder system. And when you look at open wheel racing, especially Formula One right now, they have dove in the last 5 years into really, really making a very linear path to Formula One. You start in F4 and a little before that.
Exclusive club.
It's exclusive, and you're on a direct path to Formula One, and this is the only path to get there. And they have done an amazing job of that. And if you look, what they've done doing that, they've brought attention to those lower series that they never would have had before. They've made a platform for those drivers to become stars before they ever get to Formula One and to build followings. And therefore, when they get there, they have value, and they're the best of the best. There's already a ton of fanfare and media around them, and they're a well-known name. That's what you want out of a ladder system. You also want to provide some financial incentive, right? So hold on, last thing. I think NASCAR has two decisions to make. One, it's licensing system. You have to make a licensing system that requires you to have some form of points from trucks and Xfinity that allows you to be eligible to go Cup racing, right? That's one thing I think that should be really important, just like the super license system in Formula One, where, you can gain points by running IndyCar, but it shouldn't be the same amount of points that you're getting out of driving Xfinity because it's not a NASCAR product, right? That would silo it a little bit. Two, I think you can financially incentivize people to go in your ladder system, which means, hey, win the Truck Series Championship, here's $3.5 million to go to Xfinity. Win the Xfinity Series Championship or finish top 3, here's X amount of money to go to Cup the next year. We'll pay that. Whoever Cup team hires you, we'll give them a $750,000 bonus. Boom. Or $1 million bonus, whatever it is. And that is how you do those two things, and you make your ladder system stay intact. Otherwise, this will continue to devolve into a murky, haphazard and all over the place.
Right. Where
situation.
right now it's possible that it's almost like a little bit of it's potential. The theory here that we're making is that it's fool's gold, right? That in the short term, we're benefiting from this extra attention from international drivers. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
100%.
I love these drivers coming to the sport. It's entertaining. They have personalities. They're racers. They're good. They deserve it, right? But is there a long-term risk that NASCAR loses in its exclusivity and its influence on its own ladder system, the value of its own ladder system, if drivers can go straight to the top level of NASCAR without even touching any of their feeder series?
Yep. I think it's a massive risk.
That's a massive risk.
No doubt. We should jump into some just Xfinity news. Was a massive L1 penalty for Cole Custer. They had a splitter that apparently, some inside news, had a bit of curvature in it, which you're not allowed to have. And,
Ooh.
hey, locked in the playoffs, couple races of the playoff, go to a big downforce track like Michigan, think, wonder if we could get away with this. I'm not saying this is what happened.
not?
I'm just saying in a hypothetical. Why wouldn't you put that splitter on there? Oh, they took 20 points and 5 playoff points. That doesn't mean much. We're still locked in. Oops.
Oh, well.
Moving on. Yep. So, funny enough, the 98 didn't get penalized for that. Maybe they didn't have it. Maybe because he's not locked in the playoffs. I don't know, Landon. That's weird. Speaking of Xfinity.
Yeah, I mean, both of the cars seem to run fairly well and equal
Yeah.
to each other. It's crazy that one of them had the splitter and the other one didn't, even though they were both, pretty equal on the racetrack.
Well, I think they took it before the 00 got in the track, so we'll never know how fast it could have been.
I got you. Never mind.
Yeah, it was beforehand. So, big
Okay,
news
now,
for
I'll admit you
Yeah.
caught me. Now I'm just stirring the pot. That's not fair. That's not fair.
Yeah, good times. Good times.
I'm
Xfinity.
Let's talk about good stuff.
7 out of 7 races on the NBC portion of 2023 with ratings increases, including this past weekend being one of the most watched races in a long time on NBC. Over 1.6 million people, making it the most watched sporting event on TV on Saturday this weekend. And
That's awesome.
one of the most watched sporting events of the weekend, coming in second behind the NASCAR Cup Series and ahead of the IndyCar Series in terms of people that watched. So pretty amazing. You look, this is now continuing to be the most watched Xfinity Series season on NBC and USA since 2017. So this is unprecedented. Just in line with Cup, that it's all happening. It's going up.
Hats off to NASCAR and the whole series, the car, the package, the drivers. It's all very compelling and entertaining. And honestly, the broadcast partner NBC, I think, is just for some reason just breathes a new energy into to the season. And I don't know if it's just the fact of changing it up midway through the season or what, but they've there's a different energy on that broadcast. That's awesome.
Yeah, they bring a lot. It's awesome. Let's talk bottom signals. We like to say we brought this up last week, which you brought up, which I thought was really intelligent, and that is the idea that maybe we're starting to see the bottom for the NASCAR driver market. Although the international drivers might be messing that all up, who knows, or making it better for that on whatever way you want to look at it.
Yep.
Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland announced in the beginning of August that they have been re-signed to Front Row Motorsports. First of all, this is the earliest Front Row Motorsports driver announcement ever, possibly. Bob Jenkins,
in recent memory.
Yeah, Bob Jenkins does not make decisions this early. So something incentivized him to lock these two down. First of all, Michael McDowell, if you let him go, you just basically have to pack it up and decide that you don't want to compete anymore because that guy has done an incredible thing there. Todd Gilliland has been good this year, multiple top 10s, and has had some stellar speed and runs. So, this is unprecedented. It has to be the bottom.
Yeah, but we'll dive into that in just a second. I do want to give, first of all, you gave the hats off to Michael. He well-deserved. And then I do want to give an extra nod to Todd because Todd was faced with a really tough challenge at the beginning of this year because he was essentially demoted, or at least felt like that. I mean, he still turned out to be able to run full-time, but he kind of got his hand slapped, or, well, I don't know if that's the right word to say, but, I mean, they put Zane Smith in. They were exploring another driver. They still gave him some races, but they did the whole runaround and sponsorship and yada, yada, yada BS. But at the end of the day, I guess it's performance that drives these decisions. And Todd could have keeled over and gotten upset or left, given up on the organization or his opportunity, found something else. But he dug in and he's run really well. I think he's run really well this year, and he obviously well enough to not just earn his ride back, But like you said, like we're going to discuss here, in an unprecedented fashion at FRM, that they are signing their drivers in August. And the reason we make such a big deal about that is part of Front Row's model for so many years was to simply not make a decision on the driver until January.
Yep.
Which seems crazy, but they have done it for over a decade. When I drove there, when you've talked to them in the past, like it's always been January.
Oh yeah. Always.
And so, they've always been around. They've always been around in the sport. You can make your own judgments on their performance year over year, but like it's, they've made it. But they've just simply never made driver decisions this early. And so something is in the water. And that's why we talk about it being is this another sign of the driver market bottom? And this might be, our discussions through this whole silly season, right? We're in August now, and we're going to start hearing rumors and seeing more announcements about driver announcements. And as they come in, I suppose we'll have this discussion. Is this a bottom signal, or is this a neutral signal, or is it, something else? But to me, this one is a bottom signal that Front Row said, okay, we got to lock up our drivers.
You've got Spire, who committed to Corey LaJoie on a multi-year deal last week. Yep. So obviously something in the air to get these done far earlier than in the past. And what's interesting to me is when you see early announcements like this and not a lot of sponsor announcements attached. To me, that is a healthy sign.
Another example.
That's another bottom signal and a sort of healthy uptick in that financially the incentivization is there
tells
to
you
lock the driver down.
That's a team that is saying we're prioritizing performance and we are confident that our business model is stable. Yeah. Right? Because they say we're willing to sign a driver. It's the driver we want. We obviously offered them a attractive enough package to commit to us. And we will discuss partnerships and sponsorship and funding later. Maybe some of those deals as funding and sponsorships are already done. That's fine too. But, if the deals were contingent on sponsorship or if the sponsor was really driving that decision, oftentimes you'll see the sponsor in the announcement. But these announcements weren't really that way. So, it's like I said, it's telling me that these teams picked their driver, and the driver picked them as well. And then also the teams are confident about their business models.
It's pretty interesting. You love to see it, man. It's far cry from 10 years ago when we were breaking into the series. It feels like a whole different world. And I actually had a long discussion with a Cup driver this past weekend and about the state of all this. And he felt similar, in that he just got one of the better deals of his career and that sort of thing. And he felt similar in that there was obviously a reward for performance that, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, wasn't the case, right? It wasn't always like, hey, perform and there will be a spot. It wasn't a guarantee. And now, maybe it's in a little better spot where you can perform, you can sort of rely on performance a little bit and know like, that's going to work out. I think one thing we should point out is that they also put it out there that Zane Smith, who has driven for them in the Truck Series the last couple of years, is free to look elsewhere, which he's been rumored to be one of the leading candidates for the Stewart-Haas Racing cars, if there is the 10 available or whatever one of those is available. There's still the 31 out there. There's still some rumors around some other cars in the series. So that's pretty interesting that a talent like that is, maybe is open to going to those other places, considering that, there was a lot of conjecture around FRM having the option of putting him in the Cup Series for investing him in the Truck Series. I did have a Cup Series driver tell me that they felt like he was the most exciting prospect coming to the Cup Series, which I found fascinating. And then I saw a quote by Denny Hamlin that said he felt like the Truck Series was a better, was a better place to see talent than the Xfinity Series because the trucks are so close, which I don't disagree that the trucks are far closer. If you look at like first to 20th or 18th in terms of equipment, they're really close. But the Xfinity Series, obviously you have more discrepancy in equipment because there's more openness to the equipment and that sort of thing, which I found interesting. So I don't know if I agree, wholeheartedly, because I find the Xfinity Series to be a very, very competitive series. But I thought that was an interesting hot take.
I think just quickly I haven't heard that. I think if I'm drawing my own conclusions on what he meant versus what he said, and maybe like kind of unpacking it a little bit, is if you took the drivers and the depth of talent in the Xfinity field and put them all in trucks, then maybe you would get a better read on who is ready for Cup.
Say that. Wait, but I missed that.
If you took the drivers in the Xfinity field and put them in trucks and said, okay, we're going to see how they run in trucks as a way to determine who's going to run good in a Cup car, then I could see that as being what he meant, or I could find that as a way to agree with him. Mm-hmm. But under no circumstances am I saying to prioritize performance in the truck series over Xfinity to pick your next driver.
Yeah.
Because the depth of talent in the truck series is not even close to the depth of talent in the Xfinity series. So I
agree with.
Just because you have a top 5 average finish in trucks I don't think translates just simply because of the competitiveness in the series. It's just the Xfinity series is way more competitive. There's more talent there. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to take anything away from truck series racers, that there aren't talented drivers or that any particular truck driver can't hold a candle to an Xfinity driver. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the field is deeper in Xfinity, just like the field in Cup is deeper than Xfinity. Xfinity is deeper than trucks. Like that's just, I think that's, to me, that's pretty obvious. But I get what he's saying in terms of the cars, the way the cars race because of the on throttle time and the way, the drafting and the at intermediate tracks and things like that. I guess I could maybe see what he means there. But I don't know if to me, that would translate to saying, okay, let's look to the truck series for the next batch of Cup Series talent. But I don't know. That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
I probably just talked myself into a hole by making this absolute statement of how much deeper the Xfinity series talent is than the truck series. And I'm going to find all of the truck series stands just flame me on social media, wherever they are, and be like, oh, are you kidding me? What about Carson Hocevar? What about this guy? What about that guy? And it's going to be like, I wasn't saying any of those guys aren't good.
Hey, man, it's like I always like to say, if ARCA was the Cup Series, I'd have a jet. So,
yeah. They should just be looking back. They should be looking at 2009 ARCA performances to determine who should drive today's Cup cars. And if they did, they would just put Parker Kligerman in one.
That would just be so easy. Thank you. So I think my win percentage is like 47%. I don't know, something like that. So I find it really easy to win there. And I think trucks. Yeah, you know what? I've won all my races in NASCAR and trucks. So yeah, trucks is so much more competitive. It's such a harder place to win. Absolutely not. I don't agree. I think they're all very difficult. I think the Xfinity Series is in an unbelievable spot in terms of competitiveness, and especially in your top cars in terms of the talent level. I mean, multiple Cup winners and all that stuff. It just Cup drivers and Cup level quality and Cup level quality teams. I think you can't discount that the teams are Cup level quality. One thing I'll say about the trucks, the equipment is very, very close. Yes, but in no way would the teams that are able to win races be even remotely capable of taking a Cup car and competing at the Daytona 500, whereas many of the Xfinity teams would, or are already Cup teams, right? So I just think I think that's an odd thing to say.
Before anybody takes offense to that statement, a Truck Series budget is a third of a competitive Xfinity Series budget.
Exactly.
So it's just by pure dollars, it's those teams are well behind an Xfinity team. There's a lot of talented people there, obviously, that could easily be Xfinity Series crew chiefs and crew members. But just the operations of those teams themselves are a third of the size of even any single one of your top 10 Xfinity teams.
Well, and if there's listeners out there that disagree with our points or want to tell us, let us know in the YouTube comments of this episode or I don't know where else you can reach out to us. Reach out to us at the Money Lap, wherever, or our social medias. I'm sure this will get clipped. And let us know what you think, because that's an interesting discussion. Let's move on. So Martin Truex Jr. announced he is coming back in one of the funniest ways to announce it, by just literally in a media center, like, oh yeah, I'm coming back, by the way. He also is getting his cake and eating it too. Hold on. He did buy the boat as well, I'm told. So he basically got the boat. He gets to race again. I mean, life's good if you're Martin Truex Jr., basically the fastest guy in the NASCAR Cup Series right now. Yeah, all going well for him.
Can I make another bottom signal sign?
What's that?
The driver did the driver have that much control over the process that he himself is able to just announce it in a press conference? In the last 5 years, what driver had that much control over whether he comes back or not? That he's the only person that the media talked to find out, and we're just waiting on him to decide. Is that another driver bottom signal?
Yeah, well, I think he's a unique
that
case.
He was in control of the process. I don't know if he was in control of. I don't know anything about the process. All I know is the same thing that everybody else sees on social media. That it's just like every week it's asking Martin, and Martin basically saying he hasn't decided yet. and then Martin, they didn't put together. There wasn't a big press release. It wasn't Joe Gibbs going out and saying what Joe Gibbs decided to do. It was Martin saying, oh yeah, I'm coming back, and I bought the boat, even though I don't know if anybody cares about his boat. But apparently that was a big part of the deal. So Martin, I'm happy for you, or sad that happened. I don't know about the boat.
I don't know, man. Maybe he had to come back just to be able to pay off the boat, for all we know. I don't know.
That's probably it. Oh,
he's like, I'll give you guys one more year because I bought this really expensive boat. Maybe I'll just go win a little bit more at the top of the sport. And, that'll pay this thing off, and then I'll see you later. So, I don't know.
Parker, SVG is racing a truck at IRP this weekend. And I got to say that's going to be a hard track to figure out on that short notice. Driving this. It's a bold move. Good for him. It would be interesting to watch. I think it'll be just as hard, if not harder, for him to run top 5 in that race this weekend as it will be the Cup race itself. So
I think harder. I think harder. I think honestly, truly harder. One, a low grip, short track surface that has immense tire wear. Flat, so there's not a lot of banking to hold the truck. I mean, getting to the slip angle of the tire and just all the things he's going to need to understand. I mean, that's going to be really, really tough. It's an awkward place because, the way, just the layout of the place in terms of how you be in the infield, and he's done some oval racing, sprint cars and that sort of stuff. So he's not going to be a total duck out of water, but. That's gonna be a really tough undertaking. I mean, we're still going back to the traditional mindset of coming out of other disciplines of racing and getting into a NASCAR type stock car, right? And so the only thing is, like, he's a world class driver that's going into a NASCAR truck. Yep.
I'm trying to think of the last time we've seen like a world class driver take their first shot at a truck, but even short trackers and stuff, they do well. I mean, actually, especially lately, there's been a lot of short trackers that hop into trucks and Xfinity cars and run really well right away. But even short trackers that are familiar with this style of racing hop in these cars and trucks, and it takes some time to figure out what this tire wants and how to find the limit of it, how to manage it. Like you said, there's a lot of fall off. It's very abrasive. So, that'll be an entertaining thing to watch him navigate that. and then obviously, I think he'll spend his time at IRP, and he will probably be relieved to go to the big track and find himself back in a Cup car, because I think that will be way more comfortable for him than trying to find his way in a truck.
Well, and according to Denny Hamlin, he'll be up against the true test of talent in the Truck Series, so that'll be difficult. Yeah. Let's move into Formula One.
Yep.
And continue our lovely dissection of the team principles within this wonderful sport that is Formula One and series. With this
Speaking
great
of recurring themes on the show.
Yeah. Well, you said it. They made themselves the show. And so guess what? We now need to dive into everything they say, because some of it is incredible. This week's award for best quotes from team principals in Formula One goes to James Voles, who is the team principal at William F1, and he came over there from Mercedes, where he was the head of strategy. That's right, he was the head of strategy at Mercedes. So he gets this opportunity to go over to Williams and try to bring them to the front. And I think he's really figured out, when he saw what happened to Otmar Szafnauer, how to ensure his job security for at least the next half decade. And that is putting out quotes like that it will take them most likely 5 years to get to full fruition and see if all the things he's put in place are going to be are working. So I love that idea of putting it out there publicly, that you need 5 years to see the things you're doing now pay off. Wonderful forward thinking by him. So a little bit of background on this before we dive into that part 2.
Masterful strategic thinking. 5 years to save for his house on Lake Como. So important as a team principal. It's so important as a team principal in F1 to keep your team owner's expectations under control. Help your team owner understand that you're going to have to go through 7 drivers and 2 engine changes and at least 1 sponsor bankruptcy before you get fired, before it's your fault. So
and a little bit of background on this. How did this come about? So Williams has been asking the F1 committee and essentially the teams and so on and so forth to have an increase in their capital expenditure budget so that they can improve their factory and their facilities, which has not been granted yet. And their reasoning for this, and for you in finance, this is also called CapEx for all you finance bros out there and ladies. So the reason they're asking for this is that there is provisions within the budget caps that allow teams to make massive structural upgrades. Maybe it's a wind tunnel, or it is simply the factory in which they work in, right? And Williams, his reasoning has been that they are vastly behind the other teams in that sense. They've been woefully underfunded for a better part of a decade, and therefore have fallen so far behind that within the current budget cap, they can't possibly do the upgrades that they need to their facilities, to their infrastructure, to their processes. And he goes really deep into all of that. And so, yes, I can give him, there obviously is there's a lot of merit to what he's saying about the timetable. And he said, many of these things, if we said go now, couldn't be together in, at least for 24 to 36 months before they'd even come online. So I get that. He's also big about culture. Which is one of his things, that he felt like Mercedes had a no-blame culture and that Williams has a lot of work to do and that it takes time to change 800 people and how they work together and the culture around that. So I see that. But to your point, 5 years, that's at least 3 or 4 drivers, 2 technical directors, and the possibility of at least 1 to 2 engine manufacturer changes. So he's definitely bought himself great insulation and job security to see if those changes can pay off. They have not gotten the approval for those CapEx improvements, and there's no timetable yet on when they will. So we'll see. Something to follow.
Those approvals that's an interesting thing. I didn't really know that or thought of that under the cost, the cost cap. We talk about spending cap as being a really interesting solution to leveling the field and and maintaining competitiveness in Formula One, but I didn't think about it in terms of them just simply not having the infrastructure and needing to sort of exceed the spending cap to build up their infrastructure. I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
I didn't really come to a point. I didn't really come to a point there, but I just that kind of surprised me.
Thanks for wasting all of our time. No, definitely. Thank you for wasting our time.
Great one.
IndyCar. Big announcement this past weekend around the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix for IndyCar that they will be the season finale in a 3-year deal, and that they're going to be doing on a new course that will incorporate Broadway. So Broadway being the street that, if you've ever been there, has Tootsies and all the incredible bars and looks like absolute mayhem on a Friday or Saturday, like Vegas hit the Southeast, is Broadway. So pretty cool. And also, I just got to say, awesome group that puts that together. That might be Scott Borchetta and Big Machine, like Big Machine Racing that I race for. So kudos to them. Incredible event. It's going to be even more amazing. And in no way was I not paid to say that. So,
hey, I have an interesting. I want to get serious. I want to get serious about this for just a second.
What's
I have an unfounded theory, but I'm just looking at. I'm thinking about the competitiveness between IndyCar and NASCAR and fighting for market share in this U.S. market. And we can say all we want about how we are, like brothers, and we all tide rising, lifting all boats, yada yada yada. Great motorsports, and I believe in that. I love IndyCar. We're big fans. We're going to talk about it. But let's be real: IndyCar and NASCAR, two completely different entities. They're fighting for motorsports market share in the U.S. Right? Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah,
to some degree.
In some respects, yeah. I think Formula One's more their competitor.
Is IndyCar kind of encroaching on NASCAR, like a NASCAR opportunity, by having so much, like really sinking their teeth into Nashville like this? Because NASCAR's trying to get into Nashville too. Is this IndyCar being a step ahead of NASCAR in kind of planting their flag in Nashville? Or does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. Maybe there's room. Maybe there's room in Nashville for IndyCar and NASCAR.
I think Nashville is.
But is it
first? Yeah, I don't think it's the old honky tonk. There's this town ain't big enough for the both of us sort of saying. See what I did there? Mm-hmm. But no, I think there's absolutely room for both. I think this is just like Vegas, right? Nashville is becoming it's just an absolute boom town, and therefore it can support all this. And I really think it can support 2 NASCAR races and IndyCar race, no problem. Like, I really do. Now, I don't want to see, I hope whatever NASCAR chooses to do there in the years to come, it stays special, because it's a really special place to go, and I enjoy going there, and I think it's a really cool town. And going twice would be awesome for us, but I hope we don't go twice and sort of ruin the luster of it all, if that makes sense. And I think that Grand Prix. So I love that track they had, and this one looks pretty cool as well. I think those are some pretty cool street circuits. And I'm not just saying that because, obviously, I know the group that puts it on. I really genuinely think those are cool, and it's put on good shows for Indy cars, which is not always an easy thing to do. So I think they've had good designs, and they've had tons of series and Trans Am and SRO and all sorts of groups there. So I think it's a really, really cool event. And, for there be their season's finale of their street course, I love that. I think that is a very cool decision, and to be Nashville was a really smart decision for IndyCar.
Yeah. So let's talk about another competing series, which, maybe not now isn't competing, but maybe, potentially a thorn in NASCAR's side. And we talked on a pod last week how we would, dive into a racing series. Last week we talked about Formula E. This week, let's talk about SRX. And by the way, I want to tee this up, and I'm going to kind of throw it back to you. But I'm going to tee this up by saying we wanted to talk about SRX, and both you and I were pretty critical to begin with. Myself, really, at the end of the day, my question is I don't get it. I don't get SRX. I don't know what their purpose is. I don't know what. I just don't get it, right? But we both watched the race at Berlin. I think you share the same question. We both watched the race at Berlin. what are your thoughts? Let's talk about SRX.
So I think that's the best way to sum it up. I don't understand why. So, I guess, if it was called the short track racing experience, then I get it, right? Then I get what you're trying to do. Let's go bring a big national show to some short tracks during the summer with some big NASCAR names, right? And occasional interlopers from the open wheel world or that sort of thing, right? But it's not. It's called Superstar Racing Experience, right? And it's not, I thought when it started, it's IROC 2.0. All right, cool. It's going to be the International Race of Champions. But they just go to a bunch of short tracks. So it's not the International Race of Champions, right? It's just...
And it's not all superstars, right? It's more celebrity racing. Like, they're good racers. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away, but I mean, like Ken Schrader's a legend, right? Yep. And he absolutely should be, he is a draw at a lot of these short tracks. But if you're trying to make IROC 2.0, I don't know if having, if Haley Deegan is your driver for that, right? And so I get what you're saying there. It's just like, that's why my question was like originally, I don't get it. I don't get what it's for or what they're trying to do. Now I will say I watched one. I watched the one at Berlin, and I was entertained. And I know you didn't watch the entire race. I watched the entire race. You watched leading up to the race till there were some rain delays. I actually watched the feature. I didn't watch any of the pre-race. I didn't watch any heat races, but I watched the feature, flag to flag, 100-lap race. Kyle Busch won. And it was weird because I was entertained. And it wasn't even like, I wouldn't say it was kind of good. It was a good race and there was good racing, but it wasn't a pure race, right? They have these kind of fun cautions. And, they basically threw a couple yellows within the last 20 laps of the race just for the hell of it, to get the field back together to make sure there was as good of a finish as possible. Like, that's not real racing. But I was still entertained because it was like I got to see some competitiveness in these, really good drivers, Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch in the field. They were still competitive, but then they were just in a different environment than we're used to seeing them. And, Joey Logano talking to Kyle Busch on the radio during the race, while I'm not usually a fan of that, like when we see that on iRacing and stuff like that, I think that that's super corny and stupid. In a real serious competitive race, I was entertained by it in SRX, right? Because it wasn't a serious race. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody by saying this, but it's just like, it wasn't a serious race. It was competitive, right? Like Kyle Busch, I think it's impossible for Kyle Busch not to take any race seriously that he's in, but that was almost the entertaining part of it. It was just like, I get to see Kyle Busch being being competitive and in trying to win a race, but also trying to win a race that doesn't matter, right? So we get to talk to him during the race, and we get to hear him strategize a little bit, and it's lighthearted, and then I can imagine the scene at the track. We had actually kind of texted with some people that were there, and I had gotten some feedback from some friends that were there. The place was packed. It sounded like it was a lot of fun, so I could see where it's like, it's almost like you get to take these drivers that you know and love, and you watch them every single weekend on NASCAR or, IndyCar or whatever, get them out of their environment and get to, maybe see them more as a person, but then also still see them do what they're good at doing, right? It's not like it's not like we're meeting Kyle Busch at a golf tournament or at a charity golf event. We're still getting to see him as a race car driver. But it's just in an environment where there's a lot less pressure. He's probably way more, enjoyable to be around, sign autographs. And I don't know. It just seems that's the part after watching SRX. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I get that. And I think that for as long, if that's what they're trying to accomplish, and maybe if that's what they're business model has shifted to, because remember, like you said, we were originally kind of sold as this being IROC 2.0, right? But it's like the purpose of IROC was to take the world's best drivers at the time and put them in equal equipment and see who wins, right?
Yep.
On the world's best tracks. Well, this is not what's happening with SRX. They're not taking the world's best drivers in current time and putting them in equal cars and competing on them at world-class facilities. They're going to short tracks, and they're taking some celebrity drivers and some current, world-class drivers. And they're creating a show out of it that's entertaining. And that, if that is the goal, I'm entertained. I think it's interesting. I'm not sure how much of it I'll watch a lot, but I was thoroughly entertained with what I saw.
And I think that is interesting because what you said in that it's a not serious race, right? And that's probably where I run into the roadblock of that. I watch a lot of racing around the world, from Formula E to supercars to NASCAR to Formula One to IndyCar, sports cars, and obviously it's all serious, right? And then here's something that's trying to have a bit of fun, and I don't mind that in any respect, right? I actually think the broadcast side, they do a tremendous job in terms of innovative styles and, things that they bring in and gadgets and tech, from the light up helmet and Tony Stewart to the drone that follows the cars around and that sort of thing. And they do a great job of that. And I really, really applaud them for the show.
Right.
And I think your point of why you're entertained is it's a good show. It's a hell of a show. But
Right. And those are the things you can do when it's not a serious race.
Well, and yes, but I do believe, maybe this is more of a question for you, because I don't think I've fully fleshed out in my mind what would be needed, but I think back to those IROC days, and IROC was not perfect in its last years. It was very NASCAR centric and NASCAR heavy. But if I think to like a regional IROC, right, it was like they went to different tracks, and there was a couple races in the summer that was, to your point, best drivers in the world at that time come together in equal machinery. Who's the best? For a big prize. That when we got to the NASCAR era of IROC, when it was the Crown Royal deal and it was towards the end, it was $1 million prize for 4 or 5 races. It was a big deal. And Mark Martin was good, and you have the old Dale Earnhardt stories and amazing stories of guys like Unser and I'm trying to think of other IndyCar guys that raced against Dale Earnhardt or Sebastian Bourdais, bump drafting with Jimmy Johnson down Daytona, and it was like, whoa, all the worlds were mixing together, and this was so cool. And, the poor IndyCar guys were in a massive uphill battle because the stock car guys were basically driving a stock car. But it's like, what is the modern version of that? And instead of this fun short track experience, should, the energy and time and everything that's being put into this, imagine if you were doing that with a slightly more serious, big prize IROC. Like, that to me would then be like, whoa, I got to watch that. I got to see that. And, I've seen some people that are like, let's get SRX to Lime Rock. And I think that would be so cool because they should do a road course or something. But then it's like, well, that doesn't really fit their model, because it wouldn't be serious. And it's like, well, that's too serious of a venue for that. So I think it is.
Well, I don't think nothing. I mean, hang on. This isn't a knock on Lime Rock. I think Lime Rock would be a perfect venue to continue this current model that they're in. Right? It's a short track, like it's a short road course. It's a hometown course. I mean, obviously it's outside a huge market, and maybe isn't used to drawing huge hometown crowds like a track that has a weekly racing series. Yeah, but you could still, it could be a destination event where people want to come camp for it for a couple of days. It's beautiful. And then the track is also small enough that the drivers aren't, risking their lives to race these cars in a fun manner like they would if you tried to do this event at Road Atlanta.
I don't know. Lime Rock can be pretty fast. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Here's
true.
Can I say two things? Hold on. Can I say two things? Because I'm passionate about this. I think there's another series out there that I wanted to dive a little deeper into, but I'm not going to because we've run too much on this. But I'm more focused on SRX. But Travis Pastrana, our buddy, does that Nitro Rallycross, which is now 1,000 horsepower electric cars. And I sit there and I think these two entities, if you took all the effort and time between these two and you create a series that did the rallycross track, then it did oval, and then it did road course, and we did 6 of them in the summer, and you got the biggest names, and it was a $2 million prize to win. How cool would that be? Maybe it's electric and combustion engines. Maybe it's a mix. Like, that's the thing. You know, like SRX, am I going to occasionally tune in when I'm nothing else to do? Sure, I'm going to check it out. But I'm, you know, I'm personally just like you. It's like, I'm not going to catch every one, whatever. But when and Nitro Rallycross, unfortunately, and I say this, I love Rallycross. I think it's such a cool event, and I loved the Global Rallycross deal when it was here. For whatever reason, Rallycross in America does not work. It has not worked, and it just continues to not be something that's going to get on the national consciousness. And they get crowds, and they get people that are into that world, but you're not going to, you know, it's going to be very tough for it to continue to become part of, like, the idea of a core motorsport in America. But if you took some of the amazing things they do, and SRX, and you can match it all together, now that's a series, to me, that would be very, very interesting.
Let me make a quick assessment. I don't have, this is just a total theory because I don't have a lot of knowledge of the business challenges and the fundraising challenges that SRX has. But let me just make a quick hypothesis around the difference between SRX going down a path of being a serious racing series where it's $1 million to win and the drivers have a huge reward because we're trying to be this unique racing series where we just put the drivers on an equal playing field and find out who's the best, right? SRX is a entertainment piece, right? And it's fun and it's invite only and it's, you know, it's not a serious race. There's not a huge prize. It's just fun, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Where it's currently, where at least our perception of where it's currently at right now, which, you know, Donald Hawk and the whole team over there could be completely floored by how we're describing their series right now. I have no idea. But my perception of it being an entertainment piece, right? An entertainment piece. It's not a serious race. They're just trying to have a good time. They're trying to show, you know, professional drivers in a positive light. If that, you know, under that model, I wonder if they're able to afford to get all of these drivers to come race because of that model. Where if they were going down the route of it being serious, right, where there's a prize and the drivers are going to be taking it seriously, that is just expensive, right? You're going to have to pay the drivers to get there, or you're going to have to come up with the money to put up $1 million cash prize for this thing. And the drivers are they're going to consider the risks, right? Whether it's the physical risks or the career risks, you know, the challenge of the focus of doing it all, like having to race and be, you know, having another racing event that they got to prepare for and think about and care about. That's expensive, right? Mm-hmm. Where, I mean, it's our understanding with little industry inside knowledge that that Kyle Busch isn't getting paid a whole hell of a lot of money to go do SRX.
Nope.
I mean, you and I kind of talked to somebody that might know about this, and our feedback from that was that it's not like he was getting paid a $100,000 appearance fee.
Nope.
To go do this.
Yep.
That these guys are doing it really because it's fun, I suppose. I guess that's the pitch, right? Maybe they got an opportunity to bring some of their own partners on board and help pay for it. They're not getting a whole lot of money. I mean, they're probably getting their plane paid for so they can get in and out pretty quickly and easily midweek, and it doesn't, you know, encroach on their responsibilities. But, like, I don't think they're getting a whole lot of money. So in order for them to do it for cheap, it has to be fun and lighthearted and no pressure, and just come and be yourself. And, you know, you're here for 4 hours and you can leave. Yep. Right? So maybe that's where, maybe even though, you know, originally we were told, and maybe originally the vision was SRX is going to be IROC 2.0, maybe they can't get to that point yet because it takes a lot of money to do that.
It's a good point. Yeah, I think financially, you know, what I'm discussing could just be too big an undertaking. And to your point, like, and too much in line with everything else out there. And they've identified the niche that it needed to be fun and a little bit more lighthearted and a bit show, you know, more about the show. to have the opportunity to be on ESPN
people,
and CBS and that sort of thing, right? And to be
and
the pitch, like, hey, this is more fun.
Let's be specific about what that means. SRX showed me a part of Kyle Busch and a part of Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski for at least just that couple-hour show, that 100-lap race. They showed me a bit of their personalities and expressions that we don't get to see on a regular NASCAR weekend.
Yeah. They're being, because they're too serious. Cool. Yeah, they're a serious job.
Yeah, because they're serious.
It's almost like,
and that's fine. I mean, that's that's why we tune into NASCAR. We want to see championship racing. We want to see the world's best drivers. But those guys are people too, and it is fun to kind of see what their personalities are like.
It's the rain delay coverage, or rain fill that I always make fun of, that we do in TV when it's raining, and we go and interview every driver, and we do things like this past weekend we had Harrison Burton and Austin Cindric going back and forth and some banter between Kim and I. And it's funny because you'll do all this and you'll be like, who's watching this, right? Like, what? And then you look at the ratings and it's like 2.6 million people watched, and they stayed the whole time. And because it's the most interesting thing to them, because they see a side to the drivers and the crews that they just don't see on a normal weekend, right? And that's why that rainfill TV is entertaining, and it captures an audience because it's a glimpse into a more jovial and relaxed atmosphere than is normal, right? And so, maybe that's part of the pitch. Is like, hey, we're going to bring rainfill sentiment to racing on a Thursday night.
But with a race going on.
Yeah, with a race going on. And that's what's going to be fun. So, you know what? We'll see where SRX goes. I will give them more props on being on Thursday night. I think that's super cool. The old Thursday Night Thunder mantra, which is awesome. And, I think I also really liked when they had the, local short track hero in the races. I thought that was a cool storyline when they first started.
It sounds like they're bringing that back.
Yeah, it sounds like they're bringing it back. So that's cool. I think that's something they need to keep, because it really seemed like something that genuinely got my interest when I saw those guys competing. So before we go, last thing I wanted to jump into, that is that we're going to Indianapolis this upcoming weekend. Probably the track I say is the most important motorsport, most important track in motorsports, for many reasons, but one of my favorite places in all of motorsports, and I just relish every opportunity to do anything racing there, let alone get to race. I've always said if I could win a foot race there, it would mean more than probably any other win I have. So I love that place. I can't wait. But one thing we're going to do on the Money Lap channels this week is put out another one of those cool qualifying stories. And when we were discussing it, you said, there was the Q run in 2013 Cup Series when you were driving for the 40 car, the Hillmans, was one of the most important qualifying laps of your career. And I just thought it'd be cool for everyone to. What's the background of that story?
Well, for me, it was 2014 actually.
Oh, 2014. Sorry.
Yep, that was 2014. I think in the 40 car. Because we were talking about this, I think you had in our group message, you had sent like a clip of Ryan Newman's pole run. I guess I want to get some of the dates right. But regardless, the reference that I was making, I want to make this. I want to get this right here. I'm pulling up the race.
Now we can't. Look at us. We always say we can remember years so well, and then you can't. So I know. Well, we were talking about 2013 originally because that's the Ryan Newman lap that we're going to put out there, which was just an unbelievable lap, and at the time was the track record, which then got beat the next year by Kevin Harvick, I believe. But it was such a cool lap, and there's a cool story behind it. So we're going to tell that story. But I think you might, so you might be referencing 2014 when you drove for the Hillmans, correct?
2014 was the one that stood out for me. Yeah, that was when Kevin Harvick qualified on the pole. 2014 for me. Why am I? No, that was 2013. Why am I getting this wrong? 2013. Oh man, I'm completely blowing this thing. Hold on, pause for just pause the stupid show for just a second.
We're not pausing. We're not pausing. Now you got to figure this out in real time.
Oh my god. That was 2013. Golly, I'm getting old. I am getting old. I can't even remember years. It was 2013, and here I am. We're gonna make a big deal about how important that was. It was 2013. That was like a career changing lap for me. It was 2014 that kind of was the cap. 2014 racing my way into the Daytona 500 was like the cherry on top of what started at Indy in 2013, and that was our first attempt with the 40 car at Hillman Racing.
Wow.
And you know, it was kind of one of those situations where Mike Hillman, you know, we wanted to get this second car going. We kind of needed to, because at the time, you know, in the Cup Series for those small teams, sometimes you had to run 2 cars just to pay for one. And, you know, we needed sponsorship. We needed to find some funding from maybe another driver or something to run a second car so we could build up, you know, our organization. And so the as a true racer does it, in Mike Hillman, the only way to do it is to take a gamble. And so he invested the money to build a car for Indy, lease a motor, and, you know, spend the money because there was a big prize to make the field at Indy. I think it was, at the time, it was like $180,000 to start the race or something like that.
Yep.
It was almost like it was just a little bit behind Daytona. And, you know, he knew if we could make the race at Indy, you know, we would come up with some sponsorship too, and then we would start attempting some more races and try to build it up from there, going to the end of the season, get your attempts up, and then go to Daytona and try to make the race in Daytona. And at the same time, be able to sell the other car to, you know, another driver or sponsorship to kind of build the organization up. So we went to Indy kind of with a do or die mentality, because if we missed the race at Indy, it would have been a failed project, and it would have been difficult, you know, to recover from that. And so it's funny how, as a driver, like all these things, and, you know, I knew, you know, obviously I knew this going into it. I knew this at the time, the position we were in. But as a driver, you have so many situations where it's like so many things boil down to 1:49 lap.
Yep.
You know, and we, you know, the course of the weekend, we were solid from the get-go. We unloaded off the truck with speed. Indy has always been a great track for me, for qualifying and for racing. I just always run well there. So, you know, we were never out of the picture. We faced our challenges, but like the car, we were good enough from the get-go as a matter of maintaining that. But it's just so funny to me how much that sticks out in my memory, that lap, how important that lap was, down to the point that I knew I was fast enough to make the field. I needed to not screw it up. And my focus was the exit of turn 2, because at that time, and I think the track is still probably this way, but it, you know, the time of day that we were qualifying, the way those cars drove, the way the tire fell off over the course of a 1-lap run, because yes, there is tire fall off over the course of a 1-lap run, with your out lap and the you know, the on your money lap, really. There was like more grip off of turn 4 than there was turn 2. And I don't know if the track was cooler over there in turn 4, but you would come to the green and you would just have so much grip in turn 4, and you'd go into turn 1, and if you tried to drive turn 2 like you drove turn 4 coming to green, you would miss the corner every time. And I was so close to that. I was so close to missing it in practice. I knew that I just needed to not get greedy. But the hard part about qualifying at Indy is you pick up like a second from practice to qualifying. So It's hard to tell yourself, I can't be greedy in qualifying, when you have to pick up a second. So you can't just simply go do what you did in practice, because if you did what you did in practice, you would be a second off. So there's this real fine line between, I've got to find a second, but not more than a second, because if I get too greedy off a turn, you know, particularly in turn 2, it's catastrophic down the backstretch. So I just remember feeling what I felt coming off turn 4, knowing that the car was good, but not, you know, that there wasn't an egregious amount of grip out there for me. Going through turn 1 and being like, okay, it's good. And then being in the short chute in turn 2 and turning off the wall into turn 2 at Indy and being like, I have to lift. I have to slow down. I have to back up my corner. I cannot overdrive this corner. And just sort of taking that chance of like, all right, I'm backing up this corner and focusing on exit and doing it and nailing it, going down the backstretch, hitting turn 3 and 4, and, I think we qualified 29th that day, which was huge for that team at the time and our resources, and obviously locked us in the show, easily. And that's what took us, from being a start and park team to a real race team over the course of the next 2 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I love that, and hopefully I can have a great Indy memory this coming weekend. I think that's it for the pod, man. Good stuff.
See ya.
Hey, before you go, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, click the bell icon below to be alerted to our latest videos. We also request that you let us know every single thing that we did wrong in this video or prior ones in the comment section below. We might just go through and answer them, or you'll make it to the next episode of the podcast or our next video. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to be able to listen to this podcast on the go. And subscribe to our newsletter at themoneylap.com to get the best 5 minutes in motorsports delivered directly to your email inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for watching.